Hello and welcome. You're watching One India News. This is Global Chit Chat, our weekly show where we discuss the top developments in geopolitical sphere in the recent week with our expert, Mr. Devesh Singh Maini. Hello, sir. Welcome back to our show.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
So let's dive right into it. Leaders from around the Asia Pacific called for an end of Russia-Ukraine war. And as you know that, APEC, among the APEC countries are both Russia and China as well. So what do you think is going to happen now since the countries all together have, formally issued a statement that, they condemn Russia-Ukraine war or Russia's invasion to the Ukraine war?
So I think, first of all, I'd just like to, draw your attention to the fact that during their visits to Southeast Asia, both, so basically the US Vice President Kamala Harris, she attended the APEC summit, and obviously Joe Biden first he attended the ASEAN summit, then the G20 at Bali. Now, we'll come to APEC, but I think this whole the last few days have reiterated, as we've been discussing earlier, the geopolitical importance of ASEAN. Now, it's not just symbolic; it's also because if you look at the global geopolitical situation over the past few years, ASEAN is a perfect reiteration, whatever you want to say, of the fact that how countries have had to basically make very, strike very tough sort of balance between the US and, China, Russia, and so on and so forth. And ASEAN has been able to do it reasonably successfully so far, in spite of all the problems. So that's the first thing. I mean, so if you look at if you look at 10 to 12 days, you first had the ASEAN summit, then you had the G20, that was also in Indonesia. Then you had the APEC summit, that was also in Indonesia. So that is one thing. And this is how, this in the current situation, it's not just ASEAN, other regions would also have to do the same. And probably, you can sort of other regions, regional blocks, countries, they can learn, because ASEAN has drawn a lot of flack also for internal divisions, as we've sort of discussed earlier. But here it's been quite successful. It has actually, in a way, it has come back to center stage. It can no longer be viewed just from the lens of global geopolitics, or sort of the tensions between China and US. So from the ASEAN point of view, APEC once again is very important. Now coming specifically, obviously, Russia, Ukraine, their decisions will be based on, because geographically, obviously, you made a very important point, but otherwise, the decision which Russia and Ukraine will take will not necessarily be based on this joint statement. But this again is an illustration of how countries have sort of tried to, balance out. And if you look at the APEC statement also, behind the scenes, a number of countries have tried to sort of, so US, for instance, made a mention about the G20, where Indonesia and India, played an important sort of role as intermediaries between the West and Russia. So there again, I think that is important. And the worry, it's not, one is obviously the Russia-Ukraine war itself. The other worry is the global, instability, economic turmoil arising out of the same. So that is, APEC has that is the important part, that, whether you have China, whether you have ASEAN countries, whether you have Australia, you have other, they are increasingly worried about the economic ramifications, and that has been brought to light, right? And obviously, from the Chinese point of view also, one of the convergences between China and US, both at the G20 and at APEC, has been this increasing instability as a result of the continuing war, how it's impacting the global supply chains, whether it's food, so many other issues, and this has been flagged. But I think broadly, the developments of the past few days are positive in the sense that, this whole people are beginning to get skeptical
Right.
of multilateralism. And there was, especially, I mean, there been a series of events. One was the Trump era, Trump presidency. After that, obviously,
Right.
deterioration of ties between China and US, and then COVID. So now we've seen at least this statement again as a reiteration of the fact that, irrespective of whatever the impact, whatever the immediate impact, that multilateralism is back. Now, in this, the US will play a very important role. So, I mean, there is basically, US will have to strike a balance between America first and America's back. That is going to be the US challenge.
Right.
I mean, obviously, America has to see its own internal interests, but it also wants to, it does not want to be so insular that that China gains too much of space. Right. So that is something. And I'd just like to point one thing here, that, you have had, there have been phases of US becoming isolationist earlier also, but you had one phase which was dubbed as isolationist sort of internationalism, where you are inward looking, but you haven't totally retreated, and that's not possible for the US. So I think for a while, the US will continue to be there. Biden cannot also dramatically change that, but at least sending out the signals that, you are engaging. So for instance, US and China engaging, and the US is actively involved in global issues. And what has also happened is that, even ASEAN has got a positive signal. The ASEAN grouping is, over the past 10 to 12, that the US is involved. US is, whether it's Biden or whether it's Harris, have repeatedly stated, they've spoken about the Indo-Pacific. That is another important aspect of the APEC, because one is looking at it from the lens of China. The other is, it is also important for a number of Indo-Pacific states. So the US has continuously said that it's invested in the free and open Indo-Pacific strategy. And obviously, ASEAN is an important component of that.
ASEAN is, and speaking of, Southeast Asian states, let's come to Malaysia. So Malaysia is currently facing a hung parliament, and due to which the Malaysian stock market has also gone down. So what can you tell us about the entire scenario that's happening in the country?
Okay, so there has been, political instability has been there for a while in Malaysia, and it was expected. So 112 is the magic number. Okay. So I think one political coalition has got 82, probably one has got 72. So both are saying that, they will be able to muster up to cobble up a coalition. Now, one part is obviously that obviously there's sort of fragmentation, and the verdict is far from decisive, as you know, and it's created its own complications. This has been going on for some time, over the past couple of years. But it has also, it comes at a very important time, because Malaysia, like many of the other ASEAN countries, has bounced back from COVID. It has been doing well recently. The economy has been doing pretty decent in recent times. Now, even if you look at, like, for instance, Thailand, some figures have come out that Thailand has also done well. So basically, Malaysia has benefited from tourism, from consumption. So obviously, a decisive verdict would have benefited the economy, to steer it further, and to obviously to do even better. Now, this has come at the wrong time. It could dent, in the short run, at least, the economic prospects, because everybody likes stability, and Malaysia is an important ASEAN country, which obviously, even in terms of FDI, and it's an important player. It's an important economic player within the ASEAN region. So this is certainly, it's not going to do any favors to the economy in the short run, but obviously they will have to find a way out so that, this impasse is dealt with, and it doesn't send out the wrong messages in terms of the economy and so on and so forth. There is also ideological polarization. And as an aside, I think it's after one of the important outcomes has been the defeat of Mahathir Mohamad, the former PM. So that is an important, every sort of election has some important aspect. So that is a very important aspect. But the rest, I think, as I said, basically, there are also a number of commentators are surprised that the verdict is split so much. because some people had thought that maybe there would be a more decisive verdict, but a solution will have to be found. And as usual, as it happens when there's a split verdict, I mean, both sides are saying that, they really want to muster up the numbers. That is, let's see what happens. But in economic terms, it is important. And I guess they'll need to find a solution so that whatever recovery has been made, that they can build on that momentum. I think that's what.
Right. And also speaking of political instability, UK saw a very political unstable environment a while ago when Liz Truss was ousted and Rishi Sunak came into power. Now Rishi Sunak is trying to kind of, he's burdened with the responsibility to actually get England out of a time of recession. It's going through a lot of economic down. The entire economy in UK is actually going through a little bit of problem. So at this point of time, Rishi Sunak has also proposed that, he is currently negotiating free trade agreement with India, which has been apparently going on for a while. So what do you think Rishi Sunak is trying to establish in this regard? Like, is he and he's also trying to, crack down on immigration issues in the country. He's also trying to get, what is Rishi Sunak's plan in this regard?
Again, you have to strike a balance. On the one hand, you need to show, because obviously, as we've discussed, whether it's Republicans, conservatives, they have a particular stance on immigration. So you want to show that you are strict. But then on the other hand, you also have to attract talent. This is a problem which every country faces. I mean, it's not just the West. Even in Southeast Asia, for instance, in Singapore also, there were objections that why is and there's always this argument that why is a disproportionate number of Indians, for instance, who are given, because obviously in the tech sector, they're dominant. So one is this, as you rightly pointed out, the UK-India trade agreement. And in fact, there has been an agreement. I think both sides have agreed that 3,000 professionals from India, between the age of 18 and 30 can work, for a period of 2 years. And I may also just point out that in spite of what is being said, because of Canada, the delay and rejection of student visas, number of Indian students are again looking at UK because of the 2 years after the degree. And also I think this recent agreement, this will also give a boost to the number of Indian students going there. Because see, the students have to see the opportunities available. And a lot of this, by the way, by the political class is rhetoric. Because ultimately, when you see on the ground, it's a number, like we discussed in one of our earlier shows also, that there are seasonal workers who you need. That's one part. Then even for tech, if the demand can be fulfilled. And Rishi Sunak, in one of the events at a business organization, he categorically said that the UK does not want to be left behind by China or by the US in the area of artificial intelligence. This is a perfect reiteration about the point about how you need to balance out talent, and you need to sort of look at your domestic constituency. So I think they're setting up a program where they'll try to attract, to begin with, a pilot project where 100 or so most talented individuals who have potential in artificial intelligence that are going to start a program like that, and categorically said that we don't want to be left behind by the US or by China, because obviously they're doing a lot in artificial intelligence. And then I think they're also going to find, probably this will also lead, rather than reducing the number of international students, this is only going to increase. And probably the courses which they have, so in certain courses they will give preference to international students from certain countries, including India. So I think it's a lot is about the balance, between the ground realities and rhetoric. But one thing is there, that in recent years, obviously, there has been an increasing emphasis that every country says that, basically, we don't mind immigration, but what economic benefit are we going to get? See, one model of immigration is the old one, that, two people go, they get their families and whatever. So that there is definitely a change. So probably UK will also want to attract more talent. They have to see their own interest. But you can't stop if you have qualifications, if you have talent, beyond a point, then nobody can really stop you. And this whole thing, sometimes these points are over exaggerated. I mean, even in 2016, when Trump had spoken about, immigrants, actually it was automation. It was the disruptions which are taking place, which are really resulting in job losses as well. It's not that some outsider is coming and taking those jobs. Actually, a lot of the outsiders who are coming for professional jobs. They're not even coming, but you sort of, you say that, okay, all US workers or all British workers are losing out because of immigrants. Now, an immigrant who's coming in IT or something is not taking away as such. So this is, but this rhetoric will remain because obviously it's your core, you have a core constituency. But one more point now, the issue is also something else, that post Brexit, you have to make up also for a lot of things,
Right.
because obviously you're not going to get to offset the number of people who are going to come, let's say from the EU. You have to look at all other alternatives. It's not just only in terms of trade or in terms of economic issues, it's also about the workers you have to get. And probably UK can actually benefit if you get from, maybe at one is the professional workers, the other is blue collar, you can get at a lesser rates and all. So there are always trade-offs. I think what also happens is that one is the rhetoric, the other is even the analysis sometimes does not go into the ground realities, and it looks at issues very simplistically from very simplistic binaries, which actually don't really exist when it comes to decision making or policies or so on and so forth. But simply put, I think developing talent from developing countries could benefit. And I'm not just saying India. If the UK wants to, for instance, reduce its dependence upon Chinese students, that we've been discussing, you could also look at other like Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam, for instance.
Yes.
To study in these STEM courses or in artificial intelligence and so on and so forth. And even from Africa, the talent. Yes. But the problem, one of the reasons why UK cannot attract, so it has the advantage. Yes, one advantage is that, okay, you have 2 years after your course, but the financial assistance is, scholarships and all are much lesser. That is one area where it will need to do more. Now it depends if it's really serious in attracting talent in the area of tech, it will have to look at more financial assistance, scholarships and all, like in the case of the US. The post-degree, obviously the opportunities have now picked up there also. There are opportunities which could act as a pull factor. But this is one of the handicaps which probably they'll have to address.
Right. So thank you for all the inputs that you've given us today. And thank you everybody for watching Oneindia News. And catch us again next week on Global Chit Chat. Thank you, everybody.